on May 4th. We are at the Orion Township Municipal Complex Boardroom, and this is the Charter Township of Orion Planning Commission. Can we open the meeting and have a roll call, please?
Reynolds?
Here.
Gross?
Here.
St. Henry?
Here.
Urbanowski? Here. Walker? Here. Bracken?
Here.
Ginchel? Here. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Before I proceed to the next agenda item, which would be our agenda approval and our meeting minutes, we do have a public hearing tonight at 7:05 for PC case 2022-16 for Lava Mountain Coffee special land use for a drive-through at 100 Cashmere Road, 1472 South Lapeer Road, 1480 South Lapeer Road, and 1488 South Lapeer Road, parcels 0914100074, and 1476 South Lapeer Road, which is parcel number 0914100073. So with that being said, we will pause the regular meeting when we reach the appropriate time. The petitioner will have the opportunity to make a brief public presentation. We'll ask for citizen comment and questions. If there's any citizen letters that we received, we'll also read those into the record. Then the Planning Commission will get an opportunity to speak during the public hearing portion, and then there will be a chance for the petitioner to essentially just provide comment and to the questions that were posed. We'll close the public hearing, reconvene the regular meeting, and just to be clear, there is a separation between the public hearing portion of the agenda and then also the actual business and deliberation on the site plan. So with that said, we'd like to continue on with our agenda as we can until the public hearing, which brings us to our meeting minutes. We have meeting minutes from our meeting last month on the 6th for our regular meeting minutes, and also our public hearing meeting minutes for PC case 2022-10, the River Church special land use for a church. If there's further discussion amongst our planning commissioners, we'll take that, and if not, we'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the minutes for the subject meetings as submitted.
Moved by Mr. Gross. Do I have support? Support by Mr. Walker. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, any public discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please state with aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. That leads us to our agenda review and approval. If there's no discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
I move we approve the agenda as submitted.
Motion by Mr. Gross, supported by
Support.
Kim Urbanowski. Any discussion on the motion? Any public discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please stay with aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Now, that leads us to item number 5 on our agenda, which is brief public comment on non-agenda items only. Again, non-agenda items. If anyone from the public would like to make a comment, you can step up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Seeing no one racing up to the podium, that checks us off for item number 5 on our agenda, and we do not have any consent agenda items. We're still a few minutes shy of 7:05, so we'll take a brief 1-minute recess, and then we'll reconvene when we can open the public hearing officially at 7:05. Regular meeting at 7:05 and open the public hearing for the previously mentioned public hearing for PC case 2022-16, Lava Mountain Coffee Special Land Use for a Drive-Through. Is the petitioner here to make a brief presentation? Go ahead, step up to the podium. If you could state your name and address for the record, please, and give us a general overview of what's being proposed, keeping in mind that there will be some further deliberation and reviews further in our agenda. Yep, if you could just make sure the green light's on, then you should be good.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Mitchell Harvey with Stonefield Engineering and Design. Our address is 607 Shelby Street, Detroit, Michigan. I'm here tonight representing the applicant, Lava Mountain Coffee Company. Tonight we are here requesting special land use for the proposed addition of the drive-through to the existing Lava Mountain Coffee Company at 1472 South Lapeer Road. I won't get too much detail into the site plan because I know we'll hit that in later in the meeting, but essentially what we are trying to do is add kind of reconfigure the northern parking lot a little bit to facilitate a drive-through lane for the coffee user. The site's largely going to remain the same. There'll be some minor curb improvements and some directional signage throughout the site. Going into the special land use requirements, the first one is compatibility with the adjacent uses. The site is within that Lapeer Road kind of commercial corridor there. We do have the Coney Island to the north, and then we have Burger King up further that our drive-through uses. And then there's also a few banks within the area that also have a drive-through within the immediate vicinity. Compatibility with the master plan. The site is master planned for a general commercial designation, which a drive-through restaurant would fall under. Adequate public service. Because we are not proposing any sort of expansion or increased use of the building, it's just adding a drive-through window to an existing use. We don't believe there will be any uptick in any demand for any of the existing utilities that service the building. Impact on traffic, we're adding the drive-through to this site, but it is a existing coffee use, so we don't believe there's going to be a significant increase in traffic. I know once we get to talking about the site plan, there's a traffic impact statement that we are preparing, but we don't think it'll be a large uptick in traffic. We've also designed the site in a manner for holding a significant amount of stacking spaces on site, even though we don't anticipate a ton of stacking. Generally, we have 11 within the lane, but this site could hold, 30 if need be before it even gets to any right of way. Enhancement to the surrounding environment. I kind of wanted to share these pictures here, showing the site and showing the significant landscape buffer, which would be west of our site. So this is a visual from South Lapeer Road looking west. So we'll be maintaining that existing buffer back there so any of the neighbors further west will not be able to see the drive-through lane whatsoever. And then this is just another view from Casimir. So we will be adding a few landscape islands on the site to kind of enhance the environmental aesthetic of the site. And then isolation of existing land uses. We won't be isolating any existing uses. We'll just be, utilizing this existing building and adding on to it without separating off any neighboring uses. So for that reason, I believe our proposal this evening meets the criteria for the special land use. And I'm happy to answer any questions or turn it over to the public.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks for the brief overview. We will turn it over to the public at this point in time. Again, this will appear again on our agenda as 7B. So after the public hearing is over, the topic will come back up and our professional consultants will have reviews for the proposal. With that said, if anyone is here from the public who would like to make a comment or ask any questions in regards to the public hearing process, we ask you step up to the podium. Please limit your a trip to the podium for 3 minutes to provide everyone the opportunity to speak. So at this point in time, if you would like to step up to the podium to make a comment regarding PC case 2022-16, please do so now. Seeing no one racing up to the podium, I don't believe we had any citizen letters, correct? So we have none to read into the record. Is there any comments or questions my fellow PC members would like to make or read into the record during the public hearing process? Okay, seeing none, I would usually give the petitioner the opportunity to come back up to answer questions, but since there wasn't any, we'll proceed. So with that said, at 7:10, we would like to close the public hearing for PC case 2022-16, and we would like to reconvene our regular meeting. Thank you very much. That leads us to item 7A on our agenda this evening, which is PC case 2021-43, Orion Lakes Community Center, request for extension of a revised site plan approval located at 47 Bluebird Hill Drive, parcel 0935300001. Is the petitioner present? If you'd like to step up to the podium and please state your name and address for the record and give us a little background for the request for the extension.
So my name is Kimberly Mansour. I'm the community manager there. Our office address is 47 Bluebird Hill Drive in Orion Township, Michigan, 48359. We had a community clubhouse that to be done this past year. However, just due to COVID, we had a huge spike in our delinquency as well as cost of materials and everything had gone up. So we really just weren't able to release those funds. So that is why we are filing for this extension. But we do have it on, it's set to be completed next summer.
And what's the length of extension you're seeking here tonight?
This would go through, I would say to be safe, August of 2023.
So typically we grant, and I think we're only allowed to grant an extension for 1 year. So site plan approval can be extended for that period. So I guess we'll put you in for the request for a year. And is there been, I guess, progress on your site plan approval submission in the sense of the conditions that were put forth on that previous approval? Or I guess, are we still working through engineering? Where's kind of the project in the process?
No, so they have, they have everything planned out and exactly what we are gonna be doing to the site. None of that scope of work has changed. It's really just extended, and once again, that was just due to, honestly, COVID. We've just had a huge spike in delinquency and cost of materials and everything like that.
Okay, understood. I think it's just under our understanding here that there's still some conditions to be met from that site plan approval, essentially comments or conditions that would have been officially signed off on. So we'd like to make sure those get addressed. I guess maybe starting off the conversation amongst us planning commissioners, I don't have an issue with a 1-year extension, finding that they still address our conditions that were previously made. Obviously, COVID has made a pretty big impact on occupancies and then also cost of materials. So I would be in support of the 1-year extension, finding that the conditions still be met and essentially the revised site plan be provided to us. Further discussion?
Oh, I would be in support of that as well. I know that you all had some, or we had heard about some demolitions or some, you were taking some out and putting new ones in, so I know that takes some time. And yeah, this is our first extension, so, and I understand that. That happens. I would be in support of it.
Okay. Further discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Planning Commission approves the site plan extension request for PC 2021-43, Orion Lakes Community Site Plan for 1 year until April 26, 2023. This approval is based on the following findings: the fact that they are in need of some extra time due to COVID and cost constraints.
Motion, do I have support?
Support.
Support by Mrs. Gingell. Further discussion? I would just ask if the motion maker could add the condition of essentially submitting the revised site plan drawings towards the motion, and I don't know if we want to put a timeline on that, or if we're comfortable with the larger window, even 6 months, even something to just make some motion on it. It seems like there's site plan drawings that were submitted. The previous, I guess, approval was conditional upon addressing some items.
Right.
So that's where I'm looking for, is I don't want to leave the site plan kind of condition out there. I would like to button that up.
I agree, 6 months would be a good time frame for submitting those.
All right,
So I
so
do.
6 months to essentially submit the items, the conditions of the previous approval with a 1-year extension. Mrs. Gingell, do you still support the motion?
Yes.
Okay, further discussion on the motion? Any public discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Gross.
Yes.
St. Henry.
Yes.
Urbanowski.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Gingell.
Yes.
Bracken.
Yes.
Reynolds.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening. All right, that leads us to our next new business item, which is PC case 2022-16. We just saw this, and I previously read into the record the parcel numbers and the addresses for a drive-through and site plan at Lava Mountain Coffee, special land use. If the applicant would like to add anything to their presentation, you have the floor. If not, we'll turn it over to our consultants for their reviews.
Absolutely. Mitchell Harvey, again, Stonefield Engineering, 607 Shelby Street, Detroit, Michigan. So I guess I'll just quickly go through the site plan. What we are looking to do here is kind of reconfigure the parking area to add the drive-through lane. So this is the way the drive-through lane has been configured. Essentially, majority of site traffic would come in off Lapeer Road, circle around the Coney Island, and then enter the drive-through lane here, and then turn around and pick up their coffee at this spot. Beyond that, I mean, there's going to be some minor pavement changes here. We're in a curb island. We're striping this area out to kind of further define traffic, and doing some minor ADA improvements to the sidewalk there to just make sure everything is up to code. I would just like to briefly respond to the review letter prepared by Giffords Webster and OHM. So in the Giffords Webster review letter, comments 1 through 3 we are agreeable to. We will see the plans, we'll provide a tree survey, and we will provide the maximum speaker decibel volume on the plans. No changes are being made to the site lighting, so we would like to keep it the way it is, but if a photometric plan is required, we can provide that. Parking waivers. So we are proposing 53 parking spaces where 59 are required. This was largely a result of some of the changes that we made to kind of reconfigure the parking lot and make it compliant. And one thing I kind of want to talk about the site, kind of as an overall view. The northern tenant is the Orion Coney Island, and then in the southern building you have 3 tenants. You have the Lava Mountain Coffee Company, you have Golden Paws, it's a pet groomer, and then the southern tenant is a Chicago Brothers Pizza. So really what we're anticipating is these users peak at a different time for parking demand. Generally, the coffee shop will be most busy at your morning times, people on their way to work. So, around that 8:30 to 10 o'clock time frame, where the Coney Island and the pizza place is going to be more busy at your lunches, your dinner times. And then the dog groomer in the middle is kind of, they're a very low traffic generator and a very low parking demand generator, but they'd kind of be pretty steady throughout the day. So that's why we believe that, the 6 spaces that we are short will not, hinder the site from a functionality standpoint. Comment 7, the maximum height of the building will be included. Just a point of clarification, comment number 7, both parcels are under the same ownership, so we will be able to get that easement for the cross-access for the southern property to circulate through the northern property and vice versa. Truck turning exhibit. So this is one that came up on both the Giffords-Webster and the OHM review letter. And I'd like to just point out a few things here. So this right here is a truck circulation exhibit for it'd be like an F-150 Super Cab. So the largest F-150 that they make. And if you notice in this area right here, there is a slight overhang for the truck to make that turn. So we would like to keep it the way it is because it would eat into our parking if we had to reconfigure this and push the striping further south. And just to kind of demonstrate here is, this is like a Ford Escape, and really what we anticipate, this is a representation of your typical car that you would see here. There will be some people that come that have, the larger pickup trucks, but we wouldn't consider that the norm. So, that's kind of our justification here. The last comment is regarding adding a landscaped island here to prevent vehicles from coming straight into the drive-through lane, or as well as prevent vehicle headlights shining out onto Lapeer Road, as well as generally screen the drive-through from Lapeer Road. Speaking with the operator of the site, they really want to keep this area open and not put a curb island here for vehicle circulation. And they feel that striping is going to be, sufficient to kind of direct traffic. But we would be agreeable to putting some sort of hedgerow or some type of vegetative screening in this area in green. It would really accomplish the same intent of screening those headlights as well as screening the drive-through lane itself. So that was the Giffords-Webster letter. I will spare going through the OHM letter in detail, but comment number 1 refers to the truck turning exhibit, so that's kind of the same answer. And then all the other comments we're agreeable to. We'll include them on the plan. They're pretty straightforward. I think we can work together on getting those accomplished. So with all that being said, we'd humbly request conditional approval and as well as special land use approval on the condition that we work through the comments with not only township staff, but OHM and Giffords-Webster, but we would like to exclude the inclusion of the landscaped island right here. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you very much. We'll turn it over to our professional consultants now, starting with Giffords-Webster for their review of the proposed project.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll be going over our April 28th letter. And I'm going to hit the highlights starting on what's labeled as page 37 at the bottom of your packet, page 2 of our letter. And the first 3 items, the applicant just said that they would meet in terms of signing and sealing the plans and details and the tree survey and the speaker information, the photometric. Since they're not adding any lighting, I think that's to your discretion as whether you feel comfortable with accepting that the way it is. The parking has been discussed by the applicant. They've identified the potential to share parking with the use next door, so that's an item for discussion by the Planning Commission. And then the maximum height of the structure, I know that's not changing, it's just detailed information, it's pretty straightforward. And the provision of an access easement, obviously just demonstrating since we have 2 lots sharing access, that there's an easement in place that will accomplish all of this. It's certainly something that can take place as part of final engineering. The radius issue, as you can see from what the applicant just provided, there are some issues with making that turn. Even for a passenger car, if you were to enter that, you can't just go straight and make a turn like you normally do in a drive-through. You have to kind of weave to the left, then go around, and it's not designed wide enough for a passenger car to really make that turn. I know Mark's going to get into that a little bit more, and particularly for a larger vehicle like a pickup truck, which are fairly common. It's going to be even worse for that turn. So we see that as being an issue, and we also see the screening as being something that's important. And I don't know if we can put the plan back up, but I wanted to just show something real quick, if the applicant can put the plan back up. Just the sheet, yeah, any sheet that shows the plan. So I'm just going to come over here for a second. I'll try to point the mic over so you can hear. But this is the area we're talking about, a low hedge. That provides screening of all these vehicles that are turning around and going this way, lights shining into inbound vehicles who are then turning this way to come in. So imagine coming in this way, and then you see vehicles kind of pointing this way towards you as they make the turnaround with headlights when it's dark during the wintertime. I mean, I've never seen a configuration like this, and I don't really think, from a flow perspective, I think the standards in your ordinance would suggest that there be an island here with a low hedgerow to block the headlights, not something like 6 or 8 feet tall. We're just talking about a low hedgerow to block the headlights from the incoming vehicles. The other thing, if you don't put an island here, if I'm coming in here and I know there's a drive-through, what am I going to do? I'm going to drive right through here, and someone's going to be coming into this queue that would have gone all the way around. They're looping around doing the right thing, and this person comes and just cuts them right off. It just doesn't seem like the type of operation for a drive-through that is customary, and we're not necessarily, so I think it's solvable. I think some redesign of this could modify the turning radius, add the island. I don't think it kills the project. I think it's just some minor modifications that would improve the flow and also improve the landscape screening, and we think potentially enhance safety in the area. Now, under Planning Commission waivers, some of these are waivers, some of them are discussion items. The parking spaces is one. The other deals more of a discussion regarding the landscape standards, whether you feel that all the standards are met. A lot of things aren't being changed other than some of the trees that are being removed for the drive-through and the need for screening, but that's just something for your discussion. Then number 12 on our item talks about the 2 lots used for circulation. This requires your approval. And then finally, special land use standards that are included. Those, in fact, should be reviewed as part of your deliberations to determine whether or not this proposal meets the special land use standards that are in your ordinance. So that's a summary of our comments. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Would like to turn it over to OHM for their review.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our letter of April 27th came to the similar conclusion that the plan was not in compliance with the township ordinances and engineering standards. We did list out 12 items that needed to be addressed. I'm happy to hear the applicant is willing to address all of those 2 through 12. Number 1, being the one that I think is the biggest topic of discussion here, and Rod already kind of talked about it, was the drive-through needing to be reconfigured. I'm not sure what the solution is, if it's, reconfiguring some of the parking to the north a little bit to allow a little wider of a U-turn. But the way it's presented right now is just too tight. For a passenger car, let alone anything bigger. So for that reason, I'd like to see a revised plan come back and addressing that issue. I'd be happy to go through 2 through 12 if you'd like. Some of them are kind of minor in nature, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Okay, thank you very much. Just going through a couple of the other reviews that additional Orion Township team members. The fire marshal did review the plan and had no additional comments. Public Services did a review, same thing with WRC. There was a site walk review that was completed by the site walk committee. So with that said, I will turn it over to my fellow planning commissioners for their initial thoughts, questions for the applicant or our professional consultants. I'd like to lead it off.
I've got some questions.
Go ahead, Mr. Gross.
What are the hours of operation of Lava Mountain?
So Monday through Saturday, they're 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then Sunday, they are 7 to 4.
And do you foresee maintaining those hours of operation?
Yep, no change.
Okay.
There must have been some idea as to how many cars are going to be required at any one time for the drive-through in terms of the stacking needs. Do you have any idea as to what that is based upon the current volume of the?
Yeah, so it's kind of difficult to speculate just because this isn't a Starbucks, this isn't a Dunkin' Donuts, it's not, a Tim Hortons. This is I don't want to say, a smaller coffee distributor, but, this is their location. They have, they have their clients that are very loyal to them. When we designed this, we wanted to have plenty of room for overflow stacking. But I think the number that we were throwing around is you would see 4 to 6 cars stacking. Do we have any data that says that's going to be the number? No, but it's not going to be, 15 or 16 what you see with a Starbucks.
This be considered fast food coffee versus the Starbucks specialty coffee?
I think they do have some specialty items. I don't know their menu in depth, but, I think you can get a latte there kind of thing. I don't think they're, have as big of a menu as Starbucks does, but.
My concern is the wait time, somebody getting coffee, is it going to be like a minute or is it going to be like 10 minutes?
I think they shoot for 2 minutes of turnover time for each customer.
I'm not crazy about the existing stacking arrangement. In fact, I prefer that it just go back to a regular drive-in and pull up and get your coffee and go. But this would require extensive signing in order to identify where the stacking would take place, because someone entering the site is going to, as the planner indicated, going to go for the shortest distance. And to try and direct that person around circumventing the entire site, I think it's going to be a challenge to the customer, as opposed to just driving up and placing your order. And another question, is there a drop-off window and a pickup window?
Nope, there's a menu board with like a voice box where you order and then a pickup window. So
And then it goes to a different window?
Yeah, so there's not 2 windows, there's just an order point and then your pickup window.
Okay.
And then to answer the question on the traffic circulation, we did identify that early on as something that people would likely do. So we included some on-site wayfinding, via small signs that we kind of posted here, and then along with some pavement markings and kind of directional flow arrows to kind of move customers in the right direction.
My next question is, in exiting, it's around the back of the buildings and then out to Casemer or out to Lapeer.
Yep, so they'd exit around back here and then circulate down through there and head out on their way. Kind of keeps the traffic away from the main entrance of that building. either entering or exiting. You have
So
your.
there's not going to be a reverse U-turn for people wanting to go back into the Coney.
No, if they wanted to go back into the Coney from there, they would head down around here
Okay.
and then shoot up, and then they're back into it.
Bracken?
So on the order board and menu, is that on the north side of the island or the south side?
That is on the south side by the, it's actually mounted to the building. So you would be, right where this building ends right here, you can actually see it kind of sticking out a little bit. That would be the menu and order location. Not a physical window, though, it would be, a voice box.
Because my thinking was to avoid the situation with people just driving straight through, is if you had the voice box on the island and you could only order on the north side of that island, it would prevent people from driving straight in because they wouldn't have the opportunity to order. But anyway, my second question is, what's the objection to the island?
It's the, so, the developer feels really strongly about it.
It's not a reason, though.
I think it's, he does anticipate traffic coming directly in because there's not going to be a significant amount of stacking. He doesn't want to force everybody to go around if there's 1 or 2 cars in the lane, because there's room for 4 right along the building, and that's what he feels is going to be fairly sufficient for most times. And so when, customers coming in recognize, all right, this is full, then they would circulate around and go into the basically additional stacking area. So that's why I feel strongly that he wants to keep that open.
So even with the signs telling you to turn right at that entrance, he still wants to encourage people to go straight through?
He wants to leave it as an option. In theory, you're supposed to go all the way around, enter the lane, and go around. But, if there's 2 cars in the lane, he'd like to keep that open.
All right, Mrs. Urbanowski, comment.
Yeah, that doesn't account for people who might be on the far end who may have driven. I just see it's a conflict could potentially be a conflict. It might not look like there's someone already queuing in the line if they're not that close to the building, but there could be someone on the other side. I think there needs to be some sort of island separation there for sure. And I honestly, if I'm going in for coffee, that means I'm already not caffeinated. I need to, I'm just saying, that's a lot, it's confusing.
Thank you for your honesty.
Yeah.
I agree with Kim. People just, quite frankly, aren't bright enough at times to navigate that. I've never seen anything like this before. And if we're expecting drivers to know inherently that they're supposed to go to the right around another building, another restaurant, to get to a drive-through lane, I just don't see that working. I'm curious as to the rationale. If you're looking at 4 to 6 cars stacking at any one time, that's what you're expecting. Why do we have this routing around the other building and so forth? That would accommodate 20 cars.
Yeah.
Or more. I'm very familiar with that area. I live right over there. It seems much more complicated than it needs to be.
So that was the initial idea was if we could just make this area right here a lane. But the problem is if you get 6 or 7 cars, now you got cars stacking here as they're trying to get in. So you have a car here, you got 5, 6 here, and we didn't want to spill over into Lapeer Road at all.
Well, I appreciate that because we see that's an issue at other places in town, but it just seems very, very complex.
Why couldn't you stay to the north when you came in and wrap around and come back towards Lapeer Road?
So, stay to the north and come up around like this?
Yes.
I think then it would be going against kind of what the natural traffic pattern is for the Coney Island. I think this is one way around here.
Correct.
So you'd run into a situation where, would lose your travel this way by making that change for the county. I don't know, we'd have to look at it to see if it would be an option, but you'd still run into that same U-shaped configuration.
All right, so I have a couple of comments. I echo similar concern of the current traffic flow pattern around the building. I understand that it's an existing location, and obviously, everyone here, including the developer, the occupant, is trying to look at the least impactful improvement to add a drive-through. Although I still find it necessary to provide similar stacking to all other drive-throughs that we have in the township, because although there aren't traffic data specifically for Lava Mountain Coffee, we've seen plenty of other locations that stacking, even when addressed, creates traffic patterns that, and really detrimental traffic patterns and issues that we want to avoid. So for me, that's kind of a huge issue right now. I would much rather see there be the permanent island be provided, and at least that way you gain some additional stacking spaces that provides the opportunity for the proposed signage to be moved out a little bit further to create some more wait time between order and service if that was so desired. But I think since the traffic patterns already on that site kind of go to the right to support the Coney Island, I don't see a major issue with, I guess, having that be the same sequence with the coffee area and then provide an adequate turning radius. I just don't foresee how the kind of, I don't know, maybe not the right word, but fictitious stacking that's being provided is going to meet the need of the traffic patterns and having a drive-through, and that's why there's special land uses for that. Also just have a concern with the fact that even the current area of defining the road versus the landscaping and not is, from my understanding, a proposed flush curb, not an actual rolled curb or having a height. So I just think it starts to lead to this very ambiguous traffic pattern around this proposed use. With that said, I think Lava Mountain is great. I understand that it's an existing building. It's a tricky traffic flow, but I think if this were to be added to that proposed use, it needs to be in compliance with our ordinance and address, I guess, similar traffic patterns that we ask of other proposed projects. Couple other comments that I would like to just add, you know, as continuing this discussion and seeing where it goes. I'm okay with the parking calculation waiver that they're requesting, just in the sense of, you know, I agree with of not over parking something in the sense of parking it smart. You know, with morning coffee and evening pizza, I'm fine with that. I don't feel a photometric is needed unless there's proposed lighting that's going to be added, and anything that's modified, you know, I'd want to make sure is spoken to, meeting to the ordinance. Seeing that I'm on the site walk committee, the other question that I kind of pose and as a discussion point for feedback is the landscaping on this parcel is very minimal. I know we have, it's an existing building, it's an existing development. It would be nice to see some additional plantings be provided. If they were provided initially, a lot of them have maybe died off or not been maintained. So just another talking point. I know that was in Giffel's review to just talk about the landscape improvement. So those are my comments. I'll open the floor for fellow planning commissioners. Kim, go ahead.
I also want to point out point number 2 in the OHM review about the connection between internal site sidewalk and the public pathway. That's something that we've always, or that we've been focusing on a lot lately. I'd like to see that as well for those people who might be walking and want to.
Absolutely.
And I believe that was something that you were willing to address.
Yep, of course.
Further discussion items? Okay. Thoughts? Mrs. Gurley?
Question the tree survey? Again, existing site, having been on the site, I don't know, is there anything even coming out from the middle where this is going? A couple trees, so discussion on, is it a full tree survey, is it just there? if you could.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention, Tammy. My belief would be similar to the photometric, is if we can get a, identification of what those trees are and the estimated size, that if they are landmarked, that they essentially adhere to our tree ordinance, I would be fine with that. Willing to kind of push and pull since it's an additional use or an expansion of use on an existing facility. So, being on site, it didn't appear that maybe some of the evergreens that are proposed adjacent to the building may be removed, if I'm correct, where the drive-through lane would be, but it didn't seem like many other trees would be affected. So
One tree right there.
my comment specific to landscaping was, you can kind of see this image, there's some landscaping as it was required for the Coney Island or previously the Checkers, and some of these other landscape items are a little bit barren, and I hate to add all of these conditions, but, that's why we're here with the site plan, reviewing it and considering what's a reasonable request. So further discussion.
I just wanted to add on that I agree with the parking calculation. I wouldn't be too concerned. There are different, people are dropping their dogs off and leaving. They're not staying for very long. They're, I think probably Lava Mountain would be the only place that you would sit and stay for a while, but,
Pizza's a carryout.
right, so.
Pizza's a sit-down, too.
Is it a sit-down
Yeah.
too?
It is, but
Minimally.
I haven't, I've never seen that parking lot very full.
Ever, no.
So I think those three businesses are very compatible when it comes to that.
So initial thoughts on potential motions, or if someone's willing to make one, or something to discuss prior to?
So my question to you, we have three motions in front of us. One for the special land use, which is pretty straightforward.
Yes and no. I believe the way it's proposed right now, there's a detrimental impact to traffic based on stacking. So although in general sense, I'm okay with the special land use, I'm reluctant to proceed on a special land use approval based on what we're seeing here right now. Just my thoughts. If someone feels otherwise.
I also kind of think that we should wait on the other waiver too, if they're going to reconfigure it.
The site plan,
Yeah, like
well,
thinking
all of
like,
them?
yeah, not,
Because the parking calculations can be adjusted, I guess.
it could be different, yeah.
Yep. Obviously, we've discussed the site plan issues.
Yep. So I guess as a general discussion item, leaning towards postponement and asking for revisions to be addressed. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's what I'm thinking.
Any thoughts? Okay. So I guess with that being said, if there isn't a comfort level with the special land use and the parking calculation waiver, and that's where we feel, if someone's willing to make that motion to postpone and provide some feedback based on some of the comments, obviously if a motion's made, we can further discuss it to clarify some of these things.
Would it be appropriate just to do a postponement on the site plan and just address the other two?
That would be
Special
correct,
use.
right, Tammy? Because site plan,
That's my question.
we'd be doing site plan.
You can't give a site plan approval if you haven't granted the special land use.
Correct.
I guess you could if I'm hearing you correctly, a motion could be that you're postponing deliberation on the special land use site plan.
Okay.
And with it would come, you don't even have to mention the parking calc, it would just,
Waiver. Yep.
yeah.
So I think that would be appropriate, just to make sure that the motion covers both items, that there's a special land use and a site plan approval.
They just come back with all three again, with a new site plan.
Yep.
Okay,
Someone's willing to make the motion?
I will give it a shot.
Okay.
So we're going to say that we're postponing special land use.
Deliberation on special land use and the site plan
Okay.
until,
All right, I move that the Planning Commission postpone PC 2022-16 Lava Mountain Coffee Special Land Use for Drive-Through at 100 Casemer Drive, 1472 South Lapeer Road, 1480 South Lapeer Road, 1488 South Lapeer Road, parcel 0914100074, and 1476 South Lapeer Road, 0914100073, for plans date stamp received April 13th. This postponement is based on the following findings of facts. We need to see a different site plan addressing the turning radius of the drive-through, the addition of some landscaping along that front side there. Addressing also some, a pathway from the internal parking lot to the pathway on Lapeer. We can address the parking calculation waiver once there is a second, or a site plan resubmitted. I don't think I forgot anything.
Okay.
That's it.
All right, I have a motion to have support. Support by Mr. Walker. So just a couple of clarifications. So it's your intent for the applicant to address all of the planner's comments and all of the engineer
Correct.
review comments, just to clarify. And a couple other requested clarifications would be is, I think it would be helpful to provide direction on the tree survey
Yes.
in the motion, and then also lighting in regards to the photometric.
Yes.
So, is it your intent, I guess, if you want to speak to those, you
No,
can?
I would like to see, I would like to see all those, the things in the OHM letter and the Giffords-Webster letter addressed. Just the tree survey, I don't think a tree survey is necessary because where it looks like there's not much that's coming out.
And then the same with the
In the
photometric?
photometric, right? You're not adding anything, so.
Okay. So the motion maker has amended, or clarified the motion to essentially include all of the planner's comments and the engineer's comments. A tree survey is not required due to the limited removal of trees, and same thing goes for the photometrics because no new lighting is proposed. We are not requesting a photometric. Would there be amended support on the motion, Mr. Walker?
There is.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion? Any other comments or items you would like to clarify, Ms. Gerling?
I believe the motion just said to postpone special land use. It did not
Oh,
mention site plan.
Yeah, what do we,
So I think so a further clarification, you can just add that it's due for, well, timeframe is one of them. Tammy's just asking for clarification that it's for the special land use and the site plan is being
and the site
postponed.
plan?
Okay.
Yes.
So for clarification purposes, both the special land use and the site plan is being postponed, and do you have a time frame in mind?
We usually do, 6 months, I believe? 6 months sounds,
I
6
think that's
months?
appropriate. Do you
Sounds good.
feel as you can make amendments within that time period? Okay. All right, so just to clarify, there's a motion on the table to postpone PC case 2022-16 for a time period of 6 months to allow the applicant to address the comments in the planners and engineers' letters, and to provide a safety path along or connector on M24. A tree survey is not required for the trees not being removed, and then the same thing goes for photometrics, are not required because no modifications are being proposed. Further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, any public discussion on the motion, including from the applicant?
Nothing from me.
Okay, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Walker?
Yes.
St. Henry?
Yes.
Gross?
Yes.
Angel?
Yes.
Bracken?
Yes.
Yes.
Reynolds?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much. We look
Thank
forward
you,
to
guys.
seeing you back. All right, next, this leads us to item 8A on our agenda for unfinished business, which would be PC case 2021-78, the Woodlands Planned Unit Development PUD Concept Plan, located on a vacant parcel located east of 310 Walden Road, Sidwell 0923351-024, and 330 South Lapeer Road, Sidwell 0926101-021. For those present in the room, likely for the case, would like to Just kind of give you a brief overview. The Planning Commission is a recommending body. Our previous recommendation was to deny. With a PUD, it's a multi-step process that also engages the Township Board. That recommendation to deny went to the board. There was discussions and proposal essentially made for the Planning Commission to consider the revised site plan that was discussed and presented at the Board of Trustees. So with a PUD process, that is an opportunity for the board and an option for the board to push it back to us. This is not a public hearing that has occurred in the past, so there won't be a public hearing portion of this evening. There will be further deliberation on the PUD concept plan. There'll be a brief presentation from the applicant, and then we will go over our consultant reviews based on the revised plan submittal that's being presented. And then we will deliberate. If there's a motion on the table at that point in time, similar to the other motions that have been made in the past, public will be able to make a comment based on the motion that's being made. So with that said, if the applicant is present, if you'd like to state your name and address for the record, please, and if you want to give us a brief overview of the revisions to the project so we can discuss and turn it over to our consultants for their review too.
Absolutely. Good evening. My name is Michael Wayne. Address is 3250 Auburn Road, Auburn Hills, Michigan. And I'm here tonight, of course, to talk about the Woodlands. I came with an adapter for my laptop that I thought would fit this and does not. So I have a presentation here. Would you be able to?
Is there a secondary adapter you're looking for?
Well, I need the
HDMI to what?
mini one.
Merry Christmas.
You got everything in there, don't you?
This bag goes with me everywhere, so.
My screen is not showing that. I'm not sure. What I need to do here.
Is that your computer right now?
That is, but it's just my screen share.
So, if you can go function F1 and say duplicate screen versus you're probably extending the screen, so that's your second screen, that's what you're plugged into. See if that works. Working? No?
Excellent, okay. So I need roughly about 15 minutes. Just jump through this. I just want to be thorough and explain everything that's taken place to bring us back in front of you tonight. It is great to see you all again, and I hope by the end of this presentation, you're saying the same thing. Last time we were here, we understood that we had some work left to do, and so in order to be able to be back in front of you tonight, we've obviously spent a lot of time rethinking things, and following our denial during our last planning commission meeting, we made some modifications ahead of going back to the board. Those modifications were very well received by the board members, and so they wanted us to come back here and share them with you. But in order to get to that, I just wanted to briefly explain how we got here. We initially began the Woodlands proposal. We were seeking approval for 190 units across a 20-acre parcel. This was a density of about 9.2 units per acre. We're also leaving the adjacent 7 acres, which we have under contract to purchase as well, for future development. Following some feedback from the Planning Commission members and members of the public, we understood that we still had some work to do, and so we modified that plan by first including that adjacent 7 acres to bring the total acreage of the development to 27 acres. We added about 15,000 square feet of buffer space along the adjacent residential uses. We also removed 24 units, which was a 20% decrease in our total unit count. And in doing so, we also reduced about 40,000 square foot of square footage in the building. By removing those units, this also allowed us to locate the building about 100 feet further away from the property line. But after additional feedback on this plan, and of course our last meeting here, our work was not yet done. So this led us to continue to listen and improve our plan. And we have worked very hard to do so. So in our most recent revision, we have added an additional 15,000 square feet of buffer space. This is specifically along the west side of the property line. This was our smallest buffer before. It measured only about 11 feet, and we've quadrupled that buffer to be a total of about 40 feet now. We've also relocated 32 of our units to the east portion of the site, and so in doing so, we have moved some of the residential closer to Lapeer Road, closer to some of that high traffic area and away from some of the residential uses. This was a specific aspect of our redesign that was well received by board members. We've also reduced 50% of the building footprint to 2 stories. So have a lot of detail on that, and I will come back to that in a moment. While we were very excited to bring a restaurant to Orion Township, we understood that that added some complications, and specifically it created a significant amount of traffic. Traffic, of course, in this case is a very important topic and something that's a big concern of both the Planning Commission and community members, so we decided it was in the best interest of this project to just focus on what's most important to us and what we feel is most important need in the community, being residential housing. So our newest proposal is purely residential, and we've eliminated that restaurant. We've also added a boulevard at Lapeer Road. This designates this as our main entrance and exit point so as to keep traffic flow moving towards Lapeer as opposed to Walden. Furthermore, we took the Walden Road exit and made it a right turn only, and so no traffic will be moving from from exiting the property toward the Lapeer and Walden intersection. Any traffic exiting onto Walden will be making a right turn moving away from Lapeer. The site plan on screen here depicts these changes. As you can see in the upper right, that is where the boulevard has been added. It doesn't look so on the plan, but it actually measures about 75 feet in length. So it's rather significant, and the plan is to really make that the designated main entrance. Buildings C and D are the 32 units that we've relocated. Those are 2-story buildings, walk-up style, so no common hall in there. They abut the nature area to the south of them. And as you move further west in the site plan, you'll see that we've added onto the plan some carport areas. So this is in the shaded parking space areas. We've added about 85 of those, I believe is the count. Lastly, the light shaded areas within the main buildings A and B represent the areas that are now 2-story. The dark shaded areas represent the areas that are 3 stories. So as I mentioned, Woodlands has the appearance of 2 stories from its surroundings. The way that we accomplished this was using the design you see on screen now. On the outer perimeter of the building, we have added the 2 stories, and then that connects to the 3-story portion through a large pitched roof. And so it effectively shields the entire 3-story portion from all the surrounding areas. The only way the three-story portion is visible is from the interior courtyard area to the rest of the development. None of the neighboring properties are going to be viewing that three-story aspect. Now, this is a 2.5-story design, and it's 35 feet tall. A rationale for that is that 50% of the building is 2 stories, 50% of the building is 3 stories. And so without a clear definition in the zoning ordinances that we're aware of, this is 2.5 stories. But what does that look like in real life? What we've identified here is a rendering of what the 2-story side of the building will look like to all surrounding areas. As you can see, there's really no visibility whatsoever of a 3rd story. And so this entrance here is from the end of the Walden Road entrance, so this is already 350 feet off the road, looking directly at the building from the entry point. This would be the vantage point. From all the neighboring properties, there's a 5-foot-high buffer and significant amount of landscape added to those areas. So if you could even see through all that, this would be your view of the building. So we feel that this mass and scale is much more conducive to the area than the 3-story previous design. The look and feel of the Woodlands is something that we're very proud of. In the upper left rendering, this would be the view as you enter from Lapeer Road. So this driveway is about 750 feet long, so it's more than 2 football fields going from Lapeer Road into the Woodlands. You can hardly see the building from the road. As you're driving in, the 2-story buildings I referred to would be to the left. The rendering in the upper right corner depicts those buildings. As I mentioned, they are adjacent to the nature area and the detention pond to the south, and they provide the same finish quality and, of course, access to all the same amenities, but it's a slightly different product. So as opposed to a common hall elevator building, it is a 2-story walk-up building. So it just gives a little bit more versatility and flexibility to the development as compared to the previous design. Once you get to the end of that 750-foot driveway, you're greeted by the roundabout circle there. What's behind that is the main leasing office, amenity space, and then connected to the 4,000 square foot outdoor amenity space just beyond the building there. And if you were to drive into the development from Walden Road, what you'd see is what's in the bottom right corner. At this driveway, we're about 350 feet off of the road, and so this is, again, over a football field away from the entry point, and as you're driving in, this vantage point of the building is 2 stories. Now, as mentioned in some planning reviews and at previous meetings that we haven't given a lot of detail on what the exterior facade materials of the Woodlands will feature, so we wanted to do that tonight. The brown and charcoal colors that you see are a natural wood grain composite siding. This is a really tremendous product. It's called Diamond Coat, and it's made from aspen pine. What's unique about it is that it's one of the most durable wood materials that they can create composites from. It starts at about 4 inches thick, and they compress it down to just about 3/8 inch. It's much more sturdy than fiber cement board and a lot more durable, so it's extremely high quality. It also comes with a 3-year no fade on the paint guarantee, and so what that means is that they use mineral-based paints, so over time there'll be no sun fading or fading of the color of the facade. So again, very high quality, very durable material, and we think it gives a really great aesthetic to the building as well. In addition to the natural wood grain composite, we've also included some stone accents so as to kind of break up the facade and give it a little bit more depth. We're considering the Fond du Lac natural stone for this portion of the building, and then also wanted to make sure I mentioned that nearly every unit in the Woodlands does feature a balcony. There might have been some confusion at our previous meeting that there were no balconies. Nearly all the units do have balconies and feature the railings like you see in the rendering here. We thought it was important to update our shadow study following this latest redesign. With 50% of the main buildings being 2-story, it further reduces the shadow created by the building to the point where it's almost unseeable. It really, as a result, shows that the Woodlands creates no sunscreening from the adjacent residential uses, regardless of the time of day or season. So that was a concern that some of the public shared during our public hearing, and we wanted to make it very clear that the shadows should not be a concern with this development. There's also been some concern that the Woodlands overburdens public infrastructure. This was something that we shared the last time, but I don't know that it was fully understood in terms of what we were saying, so we wanted to provide a bit of a visual here. First, beginning with the stormwater management. We had Stonefield Engineering conduct an analysis on the existing conditions of the site compared to the developed conditions of the site and what the water discharge rate looks like in each instance. In the case of the developed, 80% reduction in the discharge rate of water from the site. So the reason being is that the current site has roughly about a 3-foot grade fall from the north end of the property to the south end. Of course, being natural land, the water just flows wherever it pleases, and the path of least resistance is towards the houses on Walden Road to the south. So that could certainly be leading to some of the flooding issues that some of these adjacent properties are currently having. In the post-developed environment, we're creating a largely flat surface, which is utilizing a stormwater management system and a retention pond to manage the water. So the water's going from going wherever it wants to go to going through a stormwater management system and being effectively discharged into to the retention pond and eventually into the city's stormwater management. As it relates to water and sewer capacity, it's been confirmed by the city's Department of Public Works that there is adequate capacity both in sewer and water capacity. And so in that respect, the wall then poses no threats to those systems. Traffic has been a highly discussed topic about this project. Our latest design reduces the amount of traffic proposed as compared to the original by 60%. The reason being is the original design had 190 units, it featured a 4,000 square foot restaurant, and it had a 14,000 square foot office building. When you add in all of those different uses, you get to a much higher total amount of trips as compared to a purely residential. So in the case of the original proposal, our total AM and PM peak traffic was 383 trips, as compared to the new proposal is 154 trips. So again, compared to original amount of traffic volume, we've reduced that by 60% with the new proposal. When we take this a step further and compare the proposed amount of traffic to what's currently approved on the site, what's actually interesting is it's less than what is currently approved. So the conditional rezone that provides for the restaurant and the car club or office building creates in total 61 trips from office and 146 trips from restaurants, and the current proposal with 166 units only produces 154 trips. So we're actually reducing what's currently approved on the site by about 34%. This was something we mentioned the last time, but we'd like to reiterate that we feel the location of this project or the proposal is actually a strong benefit to the site. While there's perhaps other sites that could feature multifamily elsewhere in the township, they may be located further north. The Woodlands sits immediately adjacent to Lapeer Road, the busiest road in Oakland County, and as the graph in the bottom right represents, and as we all know, everyone goes south to work. And so by locating the Woodlands in the lower third of the township, we're preventing hundreds of cars, or in this case 154 cars, from needing to go through downtown and travel through Lapeer Road or other areas of the township that may already be congested. We get to skip that, and they get to head straight south from Lapeer Road on down. So we think that this is actually the perfect location as a result of that. Now, as it relates to existing supply, we all know it's full. And since the last time we were here, it's even more full. The slide doesn't represent this, but we just checked this today before coming in. There is not a single apartment available at any of these 6 locations, according to apartments.com, as recently as 4 o'clock this afternoon. None. The first one available is in June. So I know we can all agree that apartments are tremendously important to the further growth of Orion Township and the future expansion, and the Woodlands delivers exactly that. The other thing the Woodlands does is brings a new product type. I really want to reiterate this because there is nothing like this in the township. It's going to do a couple of things. It's going to help to retain a lot of that young talent that may be heading off from Orion Township to other areas of Oakland County that may feature higher amenity properties such as the Woodlands, because those options don't exist here currently. But it's not just the younger demographic. I mean, this would be one of the only developments other than in downtown Lake Orion that would feature an elevator in an apartment complex. So it could certainly attract an older demographic as well that's looking for the amenities and the natural landscape and a 14-acre or 12-acre nature preserve to enjoy. It would attract those residents as well. So we feel it's really important to the future of Orion to get a project like the Woodlands that not only attracts this younger demographic, but also has benefits and a draw for other demographics as well. It also is extremely high quality. Some of the existing product in the area may not fit that same description, but the Woodlands would be sort of best-in-class asset in the area, and so we think that's important to remind the commission of. We've been told a number of times, particularly in our last trip to Planning Commission, that there's no recognizable benefit of the Woodlands. What Section 3003 states are that a PUD should result in a recognizable and substantial benefit both to the residents of the project and the overall quality of life in the township. And then it lists these 7 items. So when we look at these, we somewhat scratch our heads to understand how the Woodlands doesn't fit these items. When we look at preservation of natural features, we have over 12 acres of preserved nature on land. That is something that no other property or no other apartment community in Orion Township or even the rest of Oakland County can offer their residents and offer their community. And it's important to mention that we have identified the gravel pathway that enters from Walden to the nature preserve as publicly accessible. So we plan to fully allow all neighboring properties and other members of the public to enjoy this fantastic community amenity. We also plan to pursue a conservation easement on this land. So I'd like there to be no question of our intent in the future. By providing a conservation easement, we're effectively eliminating the potential for this 12 acres to ever be developed on. So we see this as a huge benefit to the township. The second item is preservation of historic buildings. Of course, we have none, so this is not applicable. As it relates to traffic patterns, I alluded to earlier, the Woodlands actually reduces the amount of traffic that compared to what's currently proposed or currently approved by about 34%. And perhaps more importantly, it will be the impetus for MDOT to finally explore the traffic volumes at the corner of Walden and Lapeer. I spoke to a representative at MDOT, and she said the only way that MDOT starts to consider adding traffic lights or making improvements are when they're presented with a traffic study that shows there's a need. We have that, and we will present that to them. So it's very likely that the Woodlands could be the very reason that MDOT inevitably locates a traffic light in this area. Now, I want to be clear. We can't promise a traffic light here. It's not our decision. It's up to MDOT, but we will certainly be the first to promote it and to encourage it and to demonstrate through our traffic study that it is very, very necessary. The existing level of service in this area already warrants that, and that's represented in our traffic study. So this may be the very reason that it inevitably gets done, which would certainly be a benefit to the community if there was a light placed at that intersection. Improvements in aesthetic qualities. So, of course, this site features nature preservation. I've talked that through. It also features unique site design features, specifically the 4,000 square feet of outdoor amenity space or the thousands of feet of greenway connections. There's about 1,500 feet of safety path connection that will be provided from the edge of our property on Walden Road all the way around to connect to the condo community to the north, which again is a major public benefit in our eyes. This will allow community members and our residents alike to connect into this pathway system and move about throughout the community. Improvements in public safety or welfare. As I alluded to, stormwater management is going to tremendously improve as a result of the Woodlands. We'll see an 80% reduction in the discharge rate of water from the site, and this will eliminate flooding as a result of our property on neighboring parcels. High-quality architectural design. We feel this project's extremely high quality. I've discussed tonight some of the materials we plan to use. I've talked in the past about some of the interior features, and I think there should be some strong consideration given to the view that this is a high-quality project and a high-quality proposal, and we feel we absolutely meet that criteria. Lastly is the provision of transitional areas. We have over 30,000 square feet of buffer space that's been added since our original proposal. And specifically on the west buffer, we've quadrupled that from about 11 feet in total to about 40 feet in total. And so when we look at these in total, we see tremendous benefits from this project to the township, and we hope that you agree. In summary, we're here again tonight because we've continued to learn and continued to listen and continued to address concerns. And as I've described tonight, we feel that we've addressed these following key concerns, being traffic, a reduction of 60%, quadrupled the west buffer, we've reduced the height of the building from 3 stories to 2.5 stories in order to comply with RM1. We have analyzed the stormwater management system and shown that we'll produce an 80% reduction. And finally, we've reduced our density below the lowest permitted multifamily density in the community. And so from a precedent perspective, I think that sits pretty strongly that we're not proposing a tremendous amount or an outlandish amount of density that exists nowhere else in the township. This density exists in many, many places throughout the township, and certainly higher densities are permitted elsewhere. And so with that, we ask that you reconsider your decision on the Woodlands, because we feel that this would be a tremendous project for the community, and we feel that we've done everything in our power to adapt this project to meet the needs of the community and the desires of the Planning Commission. With that, I would love to elicit your feedback on what we've shared tonight.
All right, thank you very much for your presentation. At this time, we'll give our professional consultants their chance to complete or read through their reviews on the revised proposal, starting with Mr. Arroyo from Giffords-Webster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be going over our May 2nd letter. I'm going to try to hit the highlights in terms of changes. We indicate in our summary that there was a discrepancy with the number of units based upon the way it's labeled. I think it's pretty clear from the applicant's presentation that it's 166 units, so I think that can be rectified without any issues. As I go through our summary, as the applicant has indicated, the density comes in at 5.99 dwelling units per acre, which would be what is permitted in your RM1 low multiple family district. And we've provided information about what the underlying existing zoning would provide with the split zoning that currently exists. The preservation of natural features, won't go into that. Applicants indicated the preservation of those 12 acres, as well as the buffer areas. The improvements to traffic patterns, obviously the township engineer is going to go into that, but that's been discussed. Not going to spend a lot of time on that. Township master plan has also been discussed. We provide you what the current master plan designations are. The applicant has unified control of the property. Obviously, the existing conditional rezoning, the parcel it's fronting on the pier would have to be abandoned as part of this if this PUD is approved. Density plan submittal, same basic thing. We've talked about that, comparing it with what's permitted in the underlying zoning districts. Regulatory flexibility. Once again, you have the ability as part of a PUD to apply that. They've indicated how they've made modifications to the building height with the 2 stories in one section and the 3 stories in another. I won't go into that in a lot of detail. Traffic also, don't need to talk about that. It's another key item, and I know Mr. Landis will go into that in greater detail. As I go into a couple of other things I want to highlight, the recognizable benefit is certainly one of them. The applicant indicated how they feel They are providing a recognizable benefit. I do think this plan is much improved over the information that was presented previously and provides you with a more complete picture of what is proposed. So that's something for your consideration. I would also point out on page 7 of our letter that we took this table and have somewhat expanded it just so you can get a feel for what could be built under various different scenarios. And I just want to go through it just to explain what it means. So under the first row there, the current zoning, which is the combination of SE and R2, and the applicant provided a parallel plan which showed 28 units possible. Now, that did not include the multiple family because that's not zoned for residential. I mean, that did not include the general business because that is not zoned for residential. So the previous car club site obviously wouldn't be part of a parallel plan because you can't build residential on that site. So that's based on the 20.6 acres of residential property being available. Now, the next row is kind of an apples to apples comparison. If you only had the 20.63 acres that's currently zoned residential and you put a PUD on just that portion, you would be able to yield 123 potential units under RM1 zoning. And according to your master plan, which could allow up to 7, you'd get 144. But if you looked at the entire site, the 27.7 acres, you can get 166 units under RM1 zoning, and 193 if you looked at the maximum allowed in the master plan, which is the 7 dwelling units per acre. And then we looked at RM2 as well, and then we provided you with what is actually proposed, which is the 166. So they are clearly within the density limits of the RM1 zoning district. So I thought that might be helpful just to provide for a comparison of what exactly is proposed and how it compares with other possible scenarios. The other thing I would just call your attention to is the under regulatory flexibility on page 10 of our letter. They would be looking for relief. The R2 district, for example, has a maximum height of 30 feet, so does the SE district. They are proposing 35 feet. And then the number of stories is limited to 2 in the SE district. Obviously, they're proposing 2 in some areas and 3 in others. The RM1 district allows for 2.5 stories, and that's typically 2 stories with the 3rd floor being built into a gable roof, so you get about half the floor space. That's a typical 2.5-story building. They've provided their explanation of how they believe they're trying to meet the intent of that by providing some 2-story areas and some 3-story areas. So I think that's, the building length is the other ordinance issue I bring to your attention. Typically, there is a maximum length in the RM1 district, if you were to compare this to RM1, of 200 feet, and their building's actually longer than that. The main building, particularly if you look at their principal structures, the southern one in particular is at about 390 feet in length. So just in terms of departures from the ordinance, if you were to look at it as RM1, just highlighting that for your information. And they've indicated, obviously, that they're providing some other amenities and asking for consideration of what's before you. I think that's a pretty good summary, trying to highlight the changes. I'll be happy to try to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Turn it over to OHM for their review of the revised plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our letter of April 27th, 2022 is our 3rd review of this plan, and the applicant's already given a nice overview of it, so I won't go through our letter in detail, but just try to jump to some of the concluding comments. We had 2 items still outstanding. One being that we're asking that the applicant indicate on the plan whether or not they intend to provide any mitigation as recommended from the traffic impact study. I heard them say that they did not intend to include a traffic signal, but would rather rely on MDOT to make that improvement at some date in the future. Traffic study basically indicates that the traffic signals are warranted under existing conditions, but I still feel that the planning commission could request some commitment from the developer contingent upon MDOT approval and/or some cost-sharing agreement that would be obviously contingent with any, MDOT approval. So, second, as was mentioned, there's some discrepancies with the unit counts in the various architectural plans. That needs to be resolved. I think it's just a carryover from the previous plan. But the detailed unit counts in the latter pages clarify the error in the front end. And then I guess, I haven't mentioned it in my letter, but I do have to take exception to the statement that's being made about the drainage being an 80% reduction in runoff. I think that would be the first development in history that were ever the case. So, you have a vegetated, wooded site that you're going to add rooftops and parking lot. Certainly, there's going to be some stormwater management where the water is going to be collected and held in ponds and released at a much lower rate. But the intent of those stormwater facilities are basically to try to mimic and replicate the pre-development condition. It would not result in an 80% reduction in the runoff. So I just wanted to throw that out there as a clarification for my opinion. That's all I had.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate both of your reviews. There was reviews completed from the fire marshal stating that he had no additional comments even with the revised plan. Same thing occurred with the public services review by Director of the Department of Public Works, Jeff Stout. And then also there was, as a typical process to our application, there is a just general preliminary review from Water Resource Commissioner, just stating their general comments. I believe at this time there aren't any other additional reviews to read into the record. We did receive 2 resident letters that I'll let Mr. St. Henry just state name into the record and just general support or opposition to the project, so those can be read into the record.
Okay, so we received a letter from Richard and Cora Darren at 460 Walden Road, and in summarizing it, they are against the development primarily for their longstanding residents of the area, and their biggest concerns focus on drainage issues, traffic issues, and the compatibility of the development with the township's master plan. We received a second letter from Desiree Langlois. I apologize if I mispronounced that. She lives at 3053 Walden Park Drive, and she is also against this development, primarily with concerns regarding the drainage, traffic, and also negative impacts on the wildlife in the area.
Okay, thank you for reading those into the record. This time I'll turn over to my fellow planning commissioners for their initial thoughts. Since there's a lot of discussion, I guess maybe we can gather up some of our initial comments and then turn over to the applicant or the professional consultants for their response, just so there's a little bit of, I know there's a lot of discussion points here. So I guess bring it to my fellow planning commissioner for their thoughts, and if someone would like to kick it off. Mr. Bracken?
Are you saying that having the combination of the 2 and 3 stories, that it meets the zoning ordinance requirement of RM1 that allows for 2.5 stories?
Mr. Brecken, I'm not making that claim. What I am claiming is that, to our understanding, there isn't a clear definition of exactly what 2.5 stories means. There's sort of an understood principle. Our advisement from our consultants has been if half of the floor area of that last floor or I'm sorry, if that last floor is half the floor area of the floor beneath it, then that is considered 2.5 stories. Also, just thinking logically about it, if 50% of the building is 2 stories and 50% of the building is 3 stories, if you average those out, equals 2.5. It's Planner Arroyo's comment, the intent, we feel, is what we're meeting here. The intent in this case is to ensure that the neighboring properties see 2-story from their vantage points, and in no case are any of the 3-story aspects of the building visible from any of the adjacent single-family or condo communities surrounding.
So you're relying on some sort of ambiguity in the zoning ordinance about the definition of 2.5 stories?
I'm simply stating there is no definition of 2.5 stories in the zoning ordinance that I'm aware of or have been able to find. I also asked for, I reached out to Ms. Skirling and asked for one and wasn't provided a clear definition.
Okay.
However, I'd just like to point out that obviously we're pursuing a PUD, and so our comparison consistently to RM1 is purely for consideration. Obviously with the PUD, we're not looking directly at RM1 and looking for compliance. We're simply using this as kind of a basis of comparison.
Further discussion? Mr. Walker, go ahead.
You indicated that the ultimate number of units is 166, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you indicated also, I think you said, that the number of in and outs of the residents would be 154.
If I could clarify.
That?
Certainly.
What do you base that on?
Certainly, yeah, if I could clarify. So what the 154 number is just the sum of the AM peak traffic and the PM peak traffic. So it's basically just looking at the morning hour peak traffic and the evening hour peak traffic. And I'm purely using that as a comparison to that same number in the previous proposal. What I'm basing it on is a traffic study conducted by Rowe Professional Consultants. I have it here. I'm more than happy to share it with you. I know it's been submitted to the township. And all of the trip volumes and trip generations are within that report.
So that report indicates to me, I'm not a math major, but not every person who lived in the development would leave the development every day with one car.
That's not my understanding. What my understanding of this is that it's during those peak hours. So it's correct to say not every person in the development would leave or enter during the peak hours, meaning the AM peak and the PM peak. It's a typical construct that's used in the traffic studies to look at the busiest times when everyone's leaving for work and everyone's coming back. So that's purely what I'm comparing to is the peak times. It doesn't suggest that someone's not going to leave all day. It just means they might leave at 10 a.m. instead of 8 a.m. That's considered more than.
But you understand, traffic is one of the key issues in this whole discussion, right? And so you can't tell me how many additional cars will impact that intersection of Walden and 24 from your development.
Well, what I can tell you is that during the morning hours, the results of our traffic study indicate that there will be 76 cars that enter during that period. So that's during that peak time. As far as the total number of cars entering throughout the day, I can certainly review the traffic study, but typically, I'm no expert in traffic, but typically the focal point of the traffic studies looks at those peak times as opposed to just total amount of cars throughout the day. Because the majority of the time, there's a lot less traffic than there is during those peak times. So that's why they really hone in and focus on the peak times, because that's of the biggest concern. And I'd just also like to point out, too, that as far as the Walden and Lapeer intersection is concerned, I don't know that I clearly identified this, but we won't be adding to that intersection at all. No one will be able to turn left out of the development to go that direction. If they wanted to go south on Lapeer, what they'd have to do is exit on our Lapeer Road entrance and then head south that way. So that was very deliberate in order to not add to that particular intersection, because we know that's one that's of the most concern.
But you're still telling me that over half the people in this development will not be getting into their cars and leaving during the course of a day.
No, Mr. Walker, I apologize, that's not what I'm saying. All I'm referring to is
Perhaps
just during the
English
peak times.
I'm not really good at English, but I thought that's what you just said.
No, I'm just referring to the peak times. So what I'm saying with the 154 number, and The 154 number is really more of a comparison to the 383 number. What we're doing is adding the morning peak and the evening peak to look at kind of the total peak traffic that's getting added during the really hot button times, if you will. And that's what we're using to compare. But the 76 number is just referring to that morning hour. The 78 is referring to that PM hour. But I'm not saying that someone will not leave the development all day. They just might leave at a different time than the peak time. So therefore, they're not counted in that number.
Thank you.
Further discussion points? Thoughts on the revision of the proposal? Go ahead, Mr. Gross.
As a planning commission, we're charged with reviewing the ordinance and the plans as it relates to the zoning ordinance. And I think that's where this particular project runs into some difficulty because in my reading of the ordinance, it does not comply with the criteria for a PUD relative to establishing a density that is compatible with the underlying zoning classification of the property, or it is not consistent with the current master plan, which shows the property as being medium low density and low density residential. So I think it's difficult to waver from that and say, let's go to a different zoning classification, RM, multiple family, and try and apply those regulations to this property when the zoning doesn't reflect that. So I'm having trouble rationalizing 166 units on a parcel of property that does not satisfy that under the underlying zoning classification. Just as a side note, trying to relate this plan to RM standards, which it doesn't. But the one thing that I find kind of shocking or interesting is that the main buildings are in excess of 300 feet in length. That's the length of a football field. And to place that in this type of single-family residential area, I think is out of character. I'm struggling with trying to rationalize the density of 166 units on a parcel that under the zoning doesn't support it.
Okay, additional comments, thoughts? Go ahead, St. Henry.
Let me just start off by saying that I do appreciate the fact that the applicant has gone back to the drawing board 2 or 3 times now. This current plan is much better than the original site plans and so forth from a few months ago. I will give you credit there. I do agree with Mr. Gross that the overall footprint of the development, including the size of the buildings and so forth, to me are out of character for this part of the township. I've seen developments exactly like this in other parts of the country. They are very nice. They attract young professionals and so forth. But I am wrestling with, much like Mr. Gross, with the location of this development. I understand why you want it there. I understand the traffic flow, moving toward Lapeer Road and locating it in the bottom third of the township. I'm just not sure if this particular location is the right place for a development like this in our community. The zoning issues I mean, that's what a PUD is all about. You kind of, sometimes you work through those. But in this particular case, I concur with my fellow commissioners that I'm still got issues with the location of it.
Mrs. Urbanowski, go ahead.
So yeah, this was brought back because there were a couple things that they changed or proposed to change. And to your credit, yes, you did address some of those things, but there are still underlying issues, like Mr. Gross was saying. You moved some of those units closer to Lapeer, which, you know, was a nice move, but I think that maybe moving more of them or breaking the building up into smaller pieces, I don't know how big the units themselves are going to be, but that's 390 feet is still significantly more, and my concern would be, you know, public safety, not having a negative impact on public safety in terms of, you know, fighting fires and that type of thing. You broke out, you know, two separate buildings, which I just don't think is enough. I do appreciate that there was the conservation easement. Still, that number is still just a little too high, and I think there will be still people coming out on Walden, and there's still going to be a lot of traffic there. I think it was a good attempt. It's just still very dense and very chunky and big, long buildings, too big.
So I'll add a few comments here. I would echo the thoughts from Kim that I do appreciate coming back with the numerous revisions that have been proposed to essentially address some of the previous concerns that we had. I do think this is a nice product that would be very beneficial to Orion Township. You know, as I go through the PUD eligibility requirements, you know, you've checked, you know, a handful of those boxes for me, but I would tend to agree with Mr. Gross and some of the other comments that have been made on the density impact for the sense of a PUD and the township master plan. I struggle jumping from the current zoning to an RM parallel in a PUD. And then also its consistency with the master plan. I do recognize that M24 would be a good location for RM as it exists along M24 already, but we are talking about parts of the parcel that border significantly lower density levels, and that's where some of my struggle comes in from a density impact as it relates to the PUD and essentially the criteria that we have set forth for us when reviewing these projects. I don't deny the fact that a PUD is a very viable tool and is probably likely going to be a tool on anything that gets developed on this parcel because of its complex nature and it's kind of a zigzag of a parcel and, you know, in limited wetlands and things like that that are going to create some issues. So that's kind of where my main issue stands, not because it doesn't appear to be a high-quality project, but the improvement of the aesthetics and the quality to the neighbors is a struggle for me still, even with some of the buffers and with the 2.5-story proposal. I think it's the density as it relates to RM more so than anything for me is where I'm I'm struggling with this project because I want to see it in our township, I really do. It's just a struggle of the underlying zoning as we paralleled it to RM versus the R2 and I believe SE or SF, that's adjacent in the further piece. So that's where I'm still struggling with this proposal, so I'll allow some other comments to be made. Any other comments?
I just want to add that, you know, in the letters, I didn't read them verbatim, but I know that there were issues about drainage, and I know that there's been drainage issues in that part of the township and those pieces of property as that area has been developed over the last several years. The drainage issues are significant, and I'm not convinced that, I'm not a civil engineer, but that 80% reduction in water, stormwater, and so forth, that's, to me, just very ambitious. I'm very sensitive to water and standing water and water damage and so forth, and I know that is an issue in many of those lots on that end of the township. I'm not convinced that, you know, any development that goes in there will have to wrestle with that and figure it out. A development of this size with so much ground covered, it makes me a little nervous, given if you walk the area, you understand why.
Additional comments, was going to give the applicant a chance to respond to some of our thoughts and.
No, I want to add on
Go ahead.
to what Mr. St. Henry said, that those were the conversations that I've had with people as well, about this, about the water. And I think that 80% is ambitious. I mean, just according to what Mr. Landis said, you know, that anything that's done should be just kind of keeping it sort of status quo, is the way that I understood what he said. And, you know, that might be hard to do if you're adding more surfaces. I mean, I think it could potentially make it worse for the people surrounding. A lot of, yeah, I just think that it would be, I used to live in an area that, you know, had a wetland in my backyard, and every spring and summer, I mean, every spring it, you know, it was covering my backyard. I just, you know, if somebody would have put something closer to me, it would have gotten worse, and I have no doubt. But, yeah, I think I was just kind of saying thank you for saying what you said about the 80% and making that clear. It's still a lot of area that would be torn up and would have to be mitigated.
Additional comments before I turn it back over to the applicant? Go ahead.
Thank you very much for the feedback. As you've seen, we certainly listen and do our best to adapt. First, I'd just like to address the stormwater, because I want to be very clear. I think there's maybe only one of us in this room that's an engineer. I certainly am not, and I can't begin to tell you I have the technical expertise to produce that number, but the people that did do. Licensed engineers, it's a valid study, it's been reviewed by your consultants, and what it says is not that the water is going to reduce by 80%. What it says is the discharge rate of water from the site reduces by 80%. My understanding of that is that instead of the water discharging at whatever rate the natural slope of the grade takes it away from the site, now it's going to discharge at a slower rate because it's going to be contained, it's going to be funneled into the storm management system, and it's going to be sent down into the system. So we're not saying there's 80% less water. I understand the hard surfaces, they collect water more than like porous natural surfaces do. The point being is that they are now being directed into an area that they're being managed, whereas right now, they're not being directed at all. They're flowing as they please. The second piece with the stormwater management system is that you don't need to take my word for it. Your engineers will thoroughly review our stormwater management system, as you know. They will confirm that it is sufficient in their eyes to meet the needs. And so, again, we don't need to take my word for it, we don't need to take the 80% word for it, because all of that gets validated. And we're not going to be given an engineering permit to build this project until they're comfortable that our stormwater management system is sufficient. So, we'd just like to mention that. In addition, as it relates to length, this, in our mind, is really the only kind of deviation from the standards of RM1. This really has to do with a couple of things, and let me flip to the site plan here. So the rationale for that building being that length is so that we can maintain that preserved nature area. And certainly, I suppose we could find a way to cut it and make a separation there, but really that's there kind of in exchange for this 12 acres of conserved nature in perpetuity. It's also important to know that the facade is not just flat. It has deviations, it has details to it, and it's not simply a bland, boring building that you're looking at for a football field. It's a unique, interesting looking facade, and of course I can just flip back here and remind ourselves of it. So there's details to it, there's deviations, it's simply not just a flat facade. And furthermore, you can't see all 390 feet from any one place until you were to get, say, beyond our landscape buffers, as an example. If you were standing in the backyard of an adjacent property, you would not be able to see the full building because of the buffering that we're going to provide. So while the building does sit 390 feet, the vantage point of the building wouldn't be viewed that way from any of the neighboring parcels until you, again, got beyond our sort of preserved area. As it relates to the density credit, when I read what's in the review here, it talks about the following items: high level of cluster development, or at least 20% of the PUD is open space. Certainly meet that one. Item C, the proposed plan is designed to enhance surface water quality and groundwater quality. Just discussed this topic. I feel as though we meet that one. Provisions in design that preserve natural features. Of course, we meet that one. Donation or contribution of land or amenities that represent significant community benefit. We have offered to donate this land. We still would donate this land happily. So we'd certainly love to have some sort of consideration for that. And so so when you look at that, that's, basically 4 of those 6 items we feel that we strongly meet. And that's what helps us to request this density credit, is the fact that we feel like we're meeting what's stipulated here 4 out of 6 times. As it relates to the density, I would ask the commissioners, density is a very dense word, unintended. There's a lot to it, and so when you share that your concern is density, I would love to know a little bit more as to specifically what it is, because it relates to all the other things we're talking about: traffic, number of people, and mass and scale of the building. And so I would like to understand specifically what about the density, is a concern, because as it relates to the adjacent uses, as we identified in our last presentation, there's significant amounts of RM1 around us. It's to our north, it's to our east, it's to our south. There's R2 just to our north, a couple hundred feet. So it's not as though we're proposing 6 units an acre in a sea of 1 unit an acre. We're proposing 5.9 units an acre next to the busiest road in Oakland County and across the street from 300 apartments, and just to the south of, more multifamily. And so that's why we feel as though, while it sits on the edge of low-density residential, on the other side, it also sits on the edge of, again, the busiest road in Oakland County. And then as it relates to the traffic piece, again, there's a number of ways to look at that. Of course, as I mentioned, we're significantly less than we once were. We're also even less than what this commission has already approved as far as traffic density is concerned. The currently approved site plan creates more traffic than this project does. Again, don't have to take my word for it. I have a traffic study right here. More than happy to share that, but it actually is less than what's already there, or what's already been permitted once. And so, when we look at density, we started at 9.2, and if we were still there, I would certainly understand more of the concerns, but we've we've come to this point where we're sitting at 5.9, below the lowest multifamily density in the township. I get it's a tenth of a point below, so I don't take too much credit for that, but it's still below that 6 units per acre, and so we're really doing our best to try to kind of feather that. But as it relates to the need, you know, there's a need for density, not just in the economics of our project. I mean, I know that's not worth discussing tonight, and I don't intend to. The need for the density is in your township. There's need for 166 units. I mean, I showed you 6 apartment buildings that are 100% full right now. And so we just want to provide for that need. GM coming in, 3,000 new people coming here. What a shame it would be if those people had to go live somewhere else, not because they wanted to, because there was nowhere for them to live. So approving this project at this time is the perfect way to counteract that issue. Our timelines would nicely align with a lot of the improvements that are going to be made at GM, which again is 3.2 miles from our site. And we anticipate that a ton of our residents will come from that development. And so we recognize the need, and we're proposing this density because we feel the township needs it. And I've described as to kind of the location and so forth as to why we feel it makes sense. So I'll leave it at that. Lastly, as it relates to, neighboring properties, we've done what we feel is really our best foot forward in mitigating that. And so we don't feel as though we're disturbing any adjacent uses or any adjacent visuals in any kind of detrimental way. Am I going to sit here tonight and tell you that they won't see the apartment building? No, I would be foolish and lose credibility. I mean, there will be some visibility of the apartments, and we recognize that. But there's visibility of your neighbors all over the place. And so by doing it in a way that we're drastically mitigating that, we feel like we're putting a best foot forward to, again, blend with our surroundings and kind of conform to what exists in this area. And so I think the rest of my notes here would be redundant to repeat, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. So my own personal response to the struggle of the density impact. Similar to how our plan reviewer Giffords responded and gave us a chart here tonight, if we were to follow RM1 as a parallel, looking at this PUD and not including the commercial zoning, a 6 units per acre, as if it were zoned, that would be 123 units. If it were to be looked at as RM2 and not including the commercial district, it would be 165 units. So I'm just reading this verbatim off of Giffords-Webster's review. If we were to consider the entire property as RM1 zoning, that's where we get to the 166 units that are being proposed. So to echo some comments that I made earlier, I think the project has a great opportunity to provide housing to Orion Township. And I think it does have a lot of commendable amenities being proposed to it. The struggle that I have is the PUD ordinance that we sit up here and review, of these criteria of density, impact, and recognizable benefit. Yes, you are attempting to address a lot of those items. The density impact as it relates to the surrounding area and the parcel, we're kind of saying, hey, it's similar to RM zoning. Well, not necessarily straightforward, straight shot. We're assuming that the whole piece, which, yes, under a PUD would be rezoned. So I think where some of the struggle is that, yes, we're along M24 and is one of the busiest thoroughfares in Oakland County. We're also talking about being directly adjacent to large single-family home parcels, and that's a concern of myself and I believe my fellow planning commissioners. So I think if we were talking about a lower density, that was still clustering and providing these other amenities, it's a great approach. I just struggle with the number of units being proposed, assuming that it's the entire parcel, which we're sitting up here kind of critically looking at it from some other perspectives, on top of, you know, how we look at it in the sense of the master plan, which unfortunately does consider factors like drainage and developability of parcels and certain segments of the township. So that's my personal response to the feedback you're requesting on density and where we're going with it. So that's where I'm kind of struggling to see the project forward. So I'll give other planning commissioners the opportunity to discuss or provide response. Go ahead, Kim.
I have a tendency to go down rabbit holes, and so after the board meeting, I kind of went through and made a little list of all of the things that have been recently approved, and where we're at with that, and what kinds of things are actually out there still. Yeah, we do need apartments. I mean, I think we've all kind of agreed to that. There are still lots of things in this township that have yet to be built, that are for rent units. Not to mention things, and I know that we don't have anything to do with the village, but it does still impact us in terms of public service. I mean, safety services, our police and our fire, which do an excellent job, obviously. But I think we have to be really mindful of the slow potential for, you know, creating issues for those services, because we don't see these things up yet. And so that's just kind of where I'm concerned about density. 166 units is a lot in this area, I think. So density is still a consideration. And yes, I know that there are, you know, similar zoning around there, but the majority of the stuff around you is still single family. I just don't, the density is still too high for me.
Further discussions, comments? I guess if not, I'll entertain a motion. If someone's willing to make one, there'll be an opportunity to further discuss and provide comment on that too. If someone's willing to make one, or if they're ready to make one.
Okay, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Gross, go ahead.
This request has been revisited by us at the request, excuse me, of the Township Board, and reflects modifications made from the original submission by the applicant. Based upon the resubmission and the application of the zoning ordinance, I would move that the Planning Commission forwards a recommendation of the Township Board to deny the application for PC 2021-78, the Woodlands Planned Unit Development Concept and Eligibility Plan. Not the final plan, but the concept and eligibility plan, located on the vacant parcel located at 310 Walden Road, Sidwell parcel 0923, 351-024, and 3030 South Lapeer Road, being Sidwell parcel 0926, 101-021. For the plan state stamped and received April the 13th, 2022. For the reasons that this application has not met the eligibility criteria of section 30.03, paragraph B, and the intent of the planned unit development ordinance section 30.03, paragraph A, for the following reasons. One, the requested 166 dwelling units is a density of 5.9 dwelling units per acre, whereas the underlying residential zoning district permits a density of 3.2 dwelling units per acre. The proposal, as revised, represents an increase of 6 times the underlying zoning district, which is a provision of the zoning ordinance. Number 2, the current master plan designates the area as single-family medium and single-family medium low density. The concept plan as submitted is not consistent with the spirit and intent of the master plan. I would note that the master plan is currently being updated, but the current designation has not been recommended for change at the current time. Number 3, this proposal is presented and requested to be considered using the RM1 standards, which is not the underlying zoning. The RM standards do not permit 3 stories. The RM standards limit the length of buildings to 200 feet, and the proposed building length of the proposal is in excess of 350 feet. And as I indicated earlier, that's in excess of the length of a football field. The 2.5 to 3-story height is out of character with houses in the dwelling in the area, which are 1- and 2-story dwellings. Number 4, the proposal would have potential impacts, and I would indicate negative impacts, on the properties to the west, which are large, deep acreage parcels fronting on Walden Road, which would be impacted for additional development, potentially of the same nature. Number 5, the traffic study does not include traffic volume analysis to assist in evaluating the traffic signal warrants and does not indicate any potential cost sharing, if possible, relative to any traffic increases.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Gross. Do I have support? Support by Mr. Walker. At this point in time, I'll turn over to my fellow planning commissioners for their additional thoughts, questions, comments on the motion on the table. Seeing none, I'll turn it over to public comment, including the applicant, if you'd like to start. Go ahead.
Appreciate the very detailed motion there, Mr. Gross. The item I'd like to share is that I think it's important that the commission recognizes that something will be built here someday, and we feel like this is the best thing to be built here. That's why we proposed it. That's why we've been back to you. We understand your perspective, and we appreciate your analysis. But there were a couple of things in the motion that I feel are not accurate. And, well, perhaps I would like to clarify, maybe not inaccurate, but in my opinion, require some more discussion. And that is that the 2.5 to 3 story, as Mr. Gross identified, is not consistent with the character of the surrounding area. A lot of the surrounding homes are 2-story, and what those homes would see of our development is also 2-story. None of the homes can see any 3-story. So in my opinion, it is consistent in that respect. I believe item number 6 related to traffic. As I mentioned a number of times tonight, this site is currently approved for a project that generates more traffic than what we're proposing. I just struggle to see how traffic can be a justification for denial when there's already a project that is approved to generate more traffic than that. I understand the master plan is single family. I also understand there's a tremendous need for apartments in this community. And when that occurs, I think should be some consideration given to modify or utilize the creative instrument of the PUD to adapt to that need. And certainly that's what we're here requesting tonight. And it was mentioned, I believe, before the motion about not meeting eligibility. I'll spare you the repetition, but we certainly feel it does, and we've outlined that tonight. So I think that would conclude my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. At this point in time, provide an opportunity for additional public comment on the motion if anyone's willing to or would like to make comment. If you could please leave your public comments to less than 3 minutes. And please state your name and address for the record.
I'm David Gammon, and I live in Summerfield condos. I'm on the board there. I totally appreciate your concerns about the density, and I'm also very concerned and appreciative of your thoughts about water runoff. On the south side of our condos, which would fall right behind where this building would be, is underwater 90% of the time, and we cannot get a lawnmower in there or mow. We're spending money trying to drain the area, but all the water that we get behind our condos there is coming right out of this area where these are being built. It's not running on top of the ground or anything, but it's just coming through the ground. And I really feel that this would exacerbate that problem for us that we're trying to control. And I really appreciate your concern in that. I did have my question was, he mentioned that on the west side, they moved the buffer zone from 11 foot out to 40 foot. I would like to know what the buffer zone would be between their buildings and the condos and also the school next door. You know, I mean, somewhere they moved it. How much, nowhere have I seen what that buffer zone would be.
Understood. Go ahead. If you'd like to address that comment, go ahead.
So this is a site section, and so in the upper section there, that 153 foot is the distance between the end of our structure and the beginning of the closest structure in the condo community. And then the particular buffer zone with the berming and trees and so forth. In this area, the distance is a little bit small to read, but it's about 35 feet.
And that would be the same as for the school and the church there.
The school zone is not identical to that, but it is. This one is the technical difficulties here. So the school buffer zone is about 40 feet.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Additional public comments? As a reminder, please state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Kim Hunter, and I live at 310 Walden Road. My opinion on the development really hasn't changed since I first came up here and spoke. I still vehemently oppose the Woodland Pub project. I'd just like to reiterate some of my concerns as well as touch on a few different ones. Obviously, traffic and water is the same concern that you guys have. I have 4 children, and with the proposed drive directly next to my property, it definitely brings my concern of their safety as my top priority. We all know that traffic, especially during school times and bus stops, can be extremely scary. We've had several instances making that right turn onto Walden. While I can appreciate them trying to defer some traffic, making that right turn out of the complex still defers them directly in front of my house with your 154 peak in and out times during peak hours, which is bus stop times. That doesn't really deflect the traffic from our properties. The other issue I have with deflecting it, I mean, the whole Walden 24 intersection, no matter which way you look at it, it's got a D rating. It's not great. But then you deflect the traffic to 24. They're turning right onto Walden to go southbound. We're also trying to turn right from Walden to go southbound. They're coming out of their complex. We bank on that light at Home Depot every single day to turn red to get out. If we have both of us turning, no stoplights, it's not going to make that traffic intersection any better. Deferring them off of Walden to go to 24 is kind of a wash in my opinion. You're not turning, left there, but you're also coming out, I don't know how many feet away the entrance from Walden is to the planned development, but both turning right at the same time doesn't relieve any traffic from the Walden 24 intersection. The water is, I don't even know where to begin with this. We have numerous pictures in our community. I really should have got my act together and emailed them to the board so they can see the immense amount of flooding we have. Springtime, rain, snow melt. We can't even use half of our backyard. It completely covers my children's play area, our, things that we do outside. We're completely underwater, and it takes sometimes weeks to months to recede and dry up into the back part of the property they're proposing to develop was completely underwater for several months already. I'm not sure if anybody who doesn't really live in that Walden Road section that has that creek that runs between 310 and 350 to the back of the 310 property into Tracy's Pond at 270 really knows the intake of water that area has. We see it every single day. Last meeting was talked about the water basins and how they were gonna control some of the water intake and slowly release it. I was wondering with the two buildings being there, were the water basins being moved? Density, I know my time's up, density, things like that. The other thing the big thing that they said was the nature preserve being the big benefit to the community. Orion Township boasts on their parks, their green space, their county parks, their state parks. We have a ton of nature preserve. We have a ton of hiking paths. Adding 12 acres of wetlands is not a community benefit, in my opinion. I won't take up any more of your time. I appreciate you listening. Thank you.
Thank you. New or additional comments, if you'd like to make them? You're also welcome to just state your name and address for the record and agree with previous comments. Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Tracy Duman. I'm at 270 Walden Road. I'm glad the picture is still up because I am directly in front of the proposed development with the pond in front. So my feelings have not changed. I'm still opposed to this development with a primary focus on privacy, security, traffic, and my water table, right? So privacy, I'd be very interested to see the site section for my property. I guarantee you, from my back door to the parking lot will be probably 40 feet, if that. Okay, that leads into my security, right? I understand they're gonna put a 5-foot berm there with all these mature trees, but people can still walk. I mean, you know how it is. People are gonna walk into my property, right? So I would really encourage a fence, some type of security to be put up. And the traffic study, I can barely get out of my driveway and turn left on Walden after 7 a.m. So with the traffic study, I haven't seen a new updated one. So I think all the traffic blah blah is coming from the August 24th on a Thursday, where they did the traffic study from 7 to 9 a.m. and then 4 to 6 p.m. So is that even relevant? I'm not sure. Another point about my pond that I wanted to make was in one of the studies that I read, they encouraged the developer's pond to be expanded. Well, what about mine, right? It's a watershed. My pond feeds into his pond. What is the ramifications? I'm not sure. I just don't want me and my house to be collateral damage for this, okay? And I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any new or additional comments?
Hello, Pam McNabb, 350 Walden Road. I have lived in this area since 1978, and I've not changed my opinion of this either. It's not something we need in our area. The zoning doesn't meet, the density doesn't meet, the community benefit of a 12-acre parcel that's underwater is not a community benefit. We have county parks, we have state parks here. We're surrounded by a state park. Doesn't meet the master plan, but the biggest concern for me is the water. We moved there in 1978. I grew up there. Over the years, the water table there, the water has gotten worse and worse. In early 90s, when they paved the road and put the water and sewer in, the water came through that creek at a rate that washed our pool away. So forward a few years, we've got a new subdivision up the street from us. There's more water flowing down the road. On our side of the road, the water comes down the road, and when we get a heavy rain, you can stand in the front yard, or in the front window, and you can watch the water come down Walden Road and wash out our front yard to run into that creek. This is after they did all the improvements to it, when our front yard washed away, and our backyard, when they paved the road. So over the years, we now have the dump, we now have 3 new subdivisions to the west of us. All of that has contributed to the water. When I was in Florida this year, I got pictures sent to me almost every day that the snow melted. The water from the creek that runs between 350 and 310 Walden was up to the bricks on our foundation. Our backyard is constantly washed out. Our front yard is getting to the point where it's washed out. There's a small ditch that the county did when they redid the road for the new subdivision up the street. It's constantly overflowing. Who holds the liability if this damages our home? We've lived in this area for a long time, and no one's going to convince me if they start doing more building. They've approved down by Willow Creek. They now want to put in different ponds. There's nothing there that's ever been able to stop it from doing damage to our property. And we continually have to have dirt and have work done to our yards to keep from losing our homes. And adding some kind of a development like this is going to be detrimental to the 5 properties especially that have that water running through their yards. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, so we have a motion on the table. We've heard public comments previously, so is there any new topics? Go ahead.
Mary Ann Ryan, 301 Walden Road. I'd just like to thank you for maintaining the integrity of our neighborhoods. Single-family neighborhoods should not be sacrificed for development, and I appreciate you caring about us. Thank you.
Any additional public comment? Go ahead.
Susan Johnston, 348 Four Seasons.
If you could just please and make sure you speak into the
All
microphone,
right,
because it'll be.
Susan Johnston,
Thank you very
348
much.
Four Seasons. I did email a letter to Tammy, but I guess it was too late to get it included. I appreciate the motion. I agree with all of you on all your points. I just wanted to say that I don't buy where 2 stories on one side and 3 stories on another equals 2.5. And I think the issue there of the 3 stories is the height. The height's the same on that part of the building. Otherwise, I also want to say appreciate you considering the spirit of the master plan and the spirit of the area. And I really hope that our board, the other board, will actually drive out there and experience that spirit in person to see that this does not fit that area as you all have already determined. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any new or additional comments?
My name is Marcy Ramsey. I live at 335 Walden Road. I had quite a few comments, but they would just be reiterating what everybody else said. I do really appreciate what all of your comments and kind of taking us into consideration. I do have a couple things. Nobody's talking about the displacement of the wildlife in that area, and there's a lot of it on that acreage. And we would just be additionally pushing them out of their environment, which has already been happening because of the construction that has already taken place. Also, I was wondering if the Clinton River Watershed Council or the DNR have to approve any of this, and if so, has it been done?
Okay, thank you for your comments. Any other public comments? Okay, seeing no additional public comments, just as a reminder to my fellow board members, or sorry, commissioners, not board, the motion was to deny PC case 2021-78, finding that it does not meet the criteria of our PUD eligibility and concept plan of 30.03A and 30.03B. I'm paraphrasing, but the five following items, the density of 166 units at 5.9 units per acre is significantly higher than the underlying zoning, up to 3 times as great as the underlying zoning. It does not meet the master plan criteria, including the future master plan that's in the works that calls out the parcel to be suburban or SF medium and SF medium low densities. 3, the RM1 standards that were being applied, the inherent 3 stories of the building still does not comply with that, nor the overall 350 or larger facade lengths that are there. And even as a 2.5-story building, the motion was to be found incompatible with the adjacent 1 to 2-story residential units that exist adjacent. And the 4th item was that the potential approval of this project could present a negative impact to developments to the west and encourage future growth at a similar density. And then number 5 was the concerns with the traffic study and the presented facts there, and that there is no current contribution to cost sharing to improving that.
Very good.
Do I believe I hit those items? So since there's been some public discussion, I'll entertain a roll call vote, please. And reminder that this is a yes vote would be a motion to recommend denial to the Board of Trustees.
St. Henry,
Yes.
Kinjal,
Yes.
Bracken,
Yes.
Urbanowski,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Gross,
Yes.
Reynolds.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate everyone coming out tonight.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'll give everyone a few moments, so if you could just quietly exit the room. When you go out to the lobby, the light should come back on, so no worries. Hopefully the architect did his job. Unless the architect's engineer, maybe wave your hands. There you go. Perfect. All right, that leads us to, and if you could, please just keep some of the volumes in the lobby down so we can still proceed with our meetings, please. Thank you. That leads us to our next agenda item, number 8B on our agenda for PC case 2022-12, Planning Commission Bylaws Amendment. Tammy, if you want to give us just a brief overview on this. I know
I worked with the township attorney to make sure that we were in compliance with regulations. We looked for consistency between the Planning Commission and the ZBA. They should be similar. So the ZBA has already approved theirs, waiting for ours to go, coupled with it to the board. Asked for question or comments from the Board of Trustees, they had none. You've had ample time to look at it, I received no comments. With that, I have nothing else to add.
Okay. I have no major issue. My only item that I was asking for maybe a comment was there was 2 number 10s on the final page. So I didn't have any issue, but the numbering, it doesn't look like it was picked up. So all the other renumbering did. So that's my only comment. So I would move to adopt the Planning Commission's amended bylaws as discussed as a minor amendment to those presented, that there is 2 number 10s on the final page, if that can be renumbered appropriately, and forward that essentially adoption to the Board of Trustees for approval. Do I have support on the motion?
You do, support.
Support by Mrs. Urbanowski. Further discussion? Any public discussion? Seeing none, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Urbanowski?
Yes.
Bracken?
Yes.
St. Henry?
Yes.
Kinjal?
Yes.
Walker?
Yes.
Gross?
Yes.
Reynolds?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much. Any public comments? Seeing no additional public comments here to the discussion tonight, we have no communications. I don't believe we have any planners report or education.
One
Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Just a reminder, master plan open house, for your next meeting on the 18th, between 4 and 6:30. We'll be right here, got the notices here. Please, planning commissioners, it's important that you come to that. This is your master plan, and when the public comes, it's nice that you're able to be there along with the consultants to talk about that. So appreciate your attendance, and we look forward to seeing you there.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Yes, the master plan update. Sorry, Mr. St. Henry, you had a question, comment?
Yeah, can we get a copy of the latest version of the plan? Am I missing something?
You want a printed version or you want an electronic version?
I would like a printed version, just so I can look at it before the open house.
Kill a tree, Joe.
Okay,
Yep.
I kill trees every day.
maybe don't put that on record.
I'm just, listen, it's easier for me to review it.
That's the thought. No.
It's easier for me to review it
Understood.
in hand. I'm old school, but I want to be
Give
able to
him
go
one
through
copy,
it
Ken.
before we have an open house where people are going to be asking us questions.
Let me ask you one thing. It's much easier you're not worried about the quality of the pictures? Is that okay? That we can, two-sided, or do you want to see the quality of the pictures too? Do you
I'm
want?
not worried
this?
about the pictures.
Okay.
I can imagine
You're
I can
looking-
be able to get an idea that there's a picture there and what it is.
Two-sided, fine?
Yeah, I don't care. I just want to be able to look at it.
I'm just trying to make it as simple as possible. And by all means, anybody else that wants it, I'm here, I will get it for you. But a bunch of ink to look at a picture and then say the picture's foggy, if you're not looking at pictures, I'm not going to worry about that.
I just want to skim through the plan
Perfect.
and have a good feel for it if I'm meeting with people at an open house that are asking me about it.
I will call you when
That's
it's
all.
ready.
And the electronic version will be on the township's website within a few days, right?
It's supposed to be
Probably.
up tomorrow.
Up tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can look at it there on the website.
You know what? If you, that's what you want me to do, that's what I'll do.
Nope,
It's
if
just
you're,
hard.
I'm the same way, I'm much more comfortable with paper, I'll be more than happy to get it for you. I will call
Just
you
trying
when
to
it's
save
ready.
trees. All right. Any other additional comments in regards to open house? Okay, committee reports, we have none. Future public hearings, we have none. Chairman's comments. I appreciate the process. I don't mind that the board kicks a project back to us. Obviously, a project like presented here tonight is not an easy discussion. I appreciate everyone's time deliberating and really reviewing it and considering it. But I do think we have criteria that we have to rely upon and obviously evaluate projects equally against. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Mrs. Kinjal.
No comments.
Mr. Walker?
Comment. May 17th is the next library book sale, running from the 17th, I think, to the 21st. Because you're a newest volunteer person. I hear you're going to be on the board too. I heard. So don't miss it. The library's a great place, and we raise lots of the money that we raise for the library through these book sales. So please come out and buy stuff. 50 cents or $1. Even Joe can afford that.
Two things. One, I agree to Mr. Walker's comment. I've been to other communities' library book sales, and Orion Townships by far is one of the best I've ever been. Big, has everything. It's amazing how many readers we have in this community. Two, on a different note, in our master plan, in our discussions over the last couple of years, we've all talked about the need for additional housing options. Today, many of us discussed, and we agree that apartments and so forth are needed in this community for a lot of reasons. At some point in time, and I know we're looking at it, but we're going to have to make some tough decisions about different developments and locations and so forth. This one, I think that, we were all on the same page, but there are going to be others. And if we are serious about the long-term viability of this community, we're going to have to come up with some other housing options.
Agreed. One of my comments with that, Mr. St. Henry, is I do think there needs to be some discussion against density, right? I mean, it's a hot topic to this, and I think, one of my big thoughts here is the transition of density between single-family or suburban estates, against the two. But I think it is important to look at, like the proposal you had tonight has 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units, right? And that looks differently when you're looking at units per acre, right? So I just think it's sometimes to look creatively against some of these projects and what projects we want to see. Not differentiating the feelings of the project tonight, but just saying as our master plan outlines some of the missing middle that we're encouraging, some of those kind of descriptions sometimes work against some of that. So I think there's some push and pull there.
There's plenty of compromise, and I'm sure that there'll be instances where we'll have to make some tough decisions.
Agreed. Mr. Gross.
Yeah, I just started, like I said, looking at things from a different perspective in terms of what have we approved already and what's still to be built. And, you know, when I was reading through, you know, trying to make sure that we're not having a negative impact on certain parts of our township in terms of service and stuff like that. So I will move forward being very intentional and thoughtful about those kinds of things. Because we had some extra time to think about it with us, so. And the 17th and the 19th is when I'll be at the library, at the sale. So come visit me and I'll, you know.
Cut us a deal. Cut us a deal.
I'll give you a slip, a little, you know, 50
She'll
cent.
let you borrow 50 cents.
I will. I will.
Mr. Bracken.
Nothing.
Any additional comments? Tammy.
I'll keep it quick. All of you received this, again, promoting educational opportunities. This is through MTA, which I know that Chairman Reynolds just recently went to a
MTA conference.
thank you conference put on by them, and based on conversation with you, you were impressed with the material. So strongly encourage. It's Frankenmuth, you know, you get some chicken. So, and it does say that it would be recorded also. So if someone looks at the description and says, I don't really want to drive to Frankenmuth, however, I'd be interested in watching it. Again, always reach out to me. I have money in the budget for education and strongly encourage it. Last thing, I'm going to, as you're leaving, I didn't put it in your spot because sometimes you toss it aside. Each one of you, I've got a packet. If you remember when we had a joint meeting, it'd be a little over a year ago, a special committee was created on fences because the Zoning Board of Appeals was concerned the number of cases that were coming in. PC didn't want to change it, ZBA did, so we had a committee. Long and short, they still haven't been able to come up with a consensus. So I'm giving to each of you comments from each one, or anyone that offered comments from the committee. It will be coming back to us for further discussion on fences, even if it's something as simple as nice side out. But fences need to be discussed again, so please look over this material. We will be discussing it, but I just thought, you know, before it gets too warm and you got a little bit extra time, some good reading material.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you very much. Would echo the fact that MTA has been a very good resource, so I've found great value in allocating some time towards their training. So I now have 9:42. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved by Mrs. Urbanowski, support by me. Okay. All those in favor, please stay with aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries.